huge labor resources. So you laid the track wherever you could, whereas in the UK it had to be engineered the whole way. So yeah, the permanent way was much more robust, and therefore you could get away with a rigid 6-axle or 3-axle locomotive very early on, whereas the US system went for a very flexible system.
American railroads were much more speculative in terms of tapping into markets compared to the British railroads, which were, you know, pretty much like from mine to wherever it was going to go. You know, you had point A, point B, and in America, you hope to develop the traffic on the rail.
Yeah. One of the things I found interesting when we were traveling around in Georgia was that you could very quickly tell whether the town had grown up round the railroad, because the railroad went straight through the middle of it, or whether the town had existed first, in which case the railroad was sort of 2 or 3 blocks off the main street. Now in the UK, the towns were always there first. I can't think of any towns that grew up just because there was a railroad there. Some expanded a lot. They got a locomotive works or something like that. But I can't think of anywhere where the railway arrived and then the town sprang into existence around it. But it's an interesting contrast wherever you look, that all sorts of different dynamics were at work. And the two strands of engineering diverged quite very, very quickly. Tom was impressed by the fact that we didn't put cabs on our locomotives at that time.
That kind of struck me as like those poor engineers.
Well, they weren't driving trains in Massachusetts.
It rains all the time there, doesn't it?
That's what I thought. Didn't rain? I mean, unless rain is more of a like 20th century phenomenon there.
Skin is waterproof.
The darn British waterproof layer.
Slickers. They wore slickers.
From about 1870, locos were getting cabs. But there would have been open cab locos going until at least 1900.
Early American locos did not have cabs.
Yeah, I know, but I would think
imported from Britain.
Yes, but we did put cabs on them rather quickly, if you recall the John Bull.
Yeah, that's stunning. I just find that it just very
after the first winter, they learned their lesson.
Yeah, but labor was cheap in the UK, and you could always get another loco driver, probably.
Yeah,
not so easy in the United States.
No. Engine drivers were held in really high regard in England, as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
they were very expensive personnel.
They were certainly very much the sort of top end of the working class. But there was always a constant supply of people aspiring to that role. So, you know, you put up with the conditions.
Right. Your job was not secure.
No,
Don, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was curious. The British locomotive you have there, what's the prototype? When was it built?
It's a London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, 222. Which was built by Robert Stevenson and Son in 1864.
Okay, so I was fairly late for that.
They were building single driver locomotives into the 1890s.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Mike Sharman's work, and that's most of his seems to have been before that. You're familiar with him, I presume?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Figured
yes.
Everybody
I mean, some of the stuff he produces is fantastic.
Is he still around, produced?
I think he died quite recently.
Oh, that's too bad.
But yes, I mean, people still talk about some of the things he produced.
You'll notice that it's just to emphasize, you probably already noticed, everybody, but the English version's an inside connected, whereas the American 440 is an outside connected engine. Americans had a terrible time with crankshafts early on.
Yep.
The English engine's inside connected.
Almost invariably, yes. I mean,
Because
the period I model.
English, they were able to work with the crankshafts and the rods that drove the drivers, where the Americans were on the outside, and the engineering wasn't as good. But they tried doing some of the inside, and with few exceptions, they were not that well.
I think a lot of our problem with inside versus outside driving was metallurgy. When
Yes.
you crank in an axle, you're just asking for trouble. So we engineered it so it was a straight piece of axle, and even the valve eccentrics were bolted on the outside. And I think a lot of that was due to the problems with forging the proper types of metal, because that was still prior to steel when that argument was going on.
You said it a lot better than I did, Don.
I think quite a lot of it is about the quality of steel that was available. And in the United States, you come back to the remoteness of a lot of the places your railroads got to, and the need to be able to mend things with a blacksmith. So all the maintenance on a standard American is outside the wheels. If you have to fix something on the cylinders on a British locomotive, you've got to climb down underneath it and take it all apart.
Before the Civil War, a lot of New England locomotives were inside connected, but they always had to go to a marine engineer to get their crank axles, because even the big locomotive shops, the dedicated builders in New England, couldn't handle that kind of forging work. It was, from what I've read, it was the availability of those crank axles that ultimately killed the whole idea of having an inside connected locomotive in America. By the Civil War, they were mostly all gone.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing to bear in mind is we simply did not have steel at that point, and in the 40s and the 50s and early 60s. Everything was made out of iron, and they had different grades of iron. You had the generic cast iron, you had wrought iron. Wrought iron had a little less carbon in it. And if you were going to forge something out of iron, it was generally, a crankshaft, for example, would not have been forged. It would have been poured. It would have been an iron casting and then machined. So when you look at an English locomotive where you've got double frames on each side, 4 bearings per axle, everything's on the inside, it's very rigid. It's going to go down a track that's very straight, very level. We're running up and down the hills and around the trees. So the American locomotive was designed kind of as a tricycle with 3-point suspension. And all of the connections are adjusted with wedges. When you actually look at one of those things and look at how the bearings are set up, the bearings are all 2-piece bearings. They're not simple turn bushings. They're turn bushings that are split in half, and then they're adjusted for clearance with wedges that are hammered in, so that if your bearing gets a little sloppy and your locomotive starts to clank when you're 50 miles from anywhere, you get down out of the cab and you take your hammer over there and you give the wedge a whack and tighten it back up and get back in and go. And if you have a rod break or something, you get out of your cab You give the wedge a whack, you take the bearing out, you hang the side rod up on the side, and you go down the side, you go down the track on one cylinder only. And, you know, to get back to the shaft.
I love
So
it.
it's a difference.
It's a different environment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the environment.
Yeah, as I remember my history properly, the only steel prior to the Civil War was being produced by Krupp. And in the U.S., it was, well, any steel was kind of iffy. It'd be great one day, and then the next batch would be kind of, didn't work too well. But I know Krupp was importing or exporting railroad wheels to the U.S. during that period. So I don't know what share of the market they had, but I suspect not as big as they'd like.
Cool. Good. Well, any final comments or questions for Eric?
I'm impressed by the fact that you were able to equalize the drivers. What you call a compensating beam here in the States, we call it the equalizing lever. And to achieve that wiggly suspension, that's amazing. I never expected to see that work in HO scale.
That's actually terribly easy once you get the hang of it.
Yeah.
Because all you need to do is to solder together 4 layers of brass, drill the holes straight through, and you use 2 layers to produce the equalizing lever, and 2 layers for the coupling rods, and you've got your wheels absolutely at the right centers. And you don't have to worry about sloppy track work because it'll move up and down and stay on the rails. It's very, very forgiving, just like the real thing.
Yeah.
It seems that most of the books that I've read on model locomotive construction from the UK shows that as a standard item you'd put in 00 on up to O locomotives, equalized wheels. So
for this sort of size loco, just a straight compensating beam like that is fine. For people who build big locomotives, they go for springy beams and horn blocks so that all the wheels are able to move up and down in their own time. And you have something like a guitar string acting as a spring across the top of all of them. Fortunately, one of the benefits of modeling the early period is that the locomotives are all really quite small. I haven't got anything bigger than a 3-axle loco, so that suits me kind of well.
Excellent. I have a locomotive as a 280. It had the metal wire running across all the axles, keeping, providing a springing and somewhat equalizing benefit to it. But it was so stiff that it didn't provide any spring at all. The locomotive wasn't heavy. So I got the bright idea I would make a new one. So I bent up a new piece of wire of a smaller diameter and put it in there. And then I started having problems with the engine jamming up on curves. Well, I was running something like a 20-inch radius curve, and the blind drivers were dropping into the gap on the short curves as it came around. So I put the old ones back in and haven't messed with it since.
Right. What's that, Eric? You're showing us.
That's just me getting back to the UK. That's my British layout.
My granddaughter said your 222 prototype was Emily from Thomas the Tank Engine.
I enjoy your British. I remember quite well the Lady Edith, which is parked over by you, Tom, out at Allaire, which is a Welch narrow gauge.
Okay.
And it operated until a few years ago, but now it has to, the boiler lost certification, and not too many black, what we call Black Seal boiler guys available to do volunteer work to rebuild 1872 locos.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's a continuous game on all our preserved railways to keep their locomotives in ticket and have enough to run a regular service. And this year with the COVID, they've had particular problems. They haven't had the ability to get people into the workshops to keep up with the restoration work. Mind you, they haven't had any traffic either.
Right. Right.
Can you show us some more slides of your English loco, your layout?
I just put that one on the end. But
Okay.
what I did have was, that's my UK layout erected at an exhibition. A set of steps for me to sit on, very handy for letting small children climb up and have a look. And that was at an exhibition in one of our local schools. This is a couple of years ago now. The exhibitions have closed down completely this year, but it just gives a flavor. It's completely different from an American train show. That layout there was actually a US outline one. Somebody retailing stuff there. Whole series of self-contained models around the side of the room. Fairly typical. And from my point of view, the aim is that it should fit in the back of my car. That's my large car.
I built a module that had to fit inside the car I still have. That's been over a decade now.
This gets
Did
the whole layout in.
Did you build those like little tripod thing? They're stands for your.
Yeah, they're just simple timber trestles.
You built them.
That's all that is. Yeah, they're very crude. And then there's a horizontal beam across the top,
Right.
Shaped a bit like my idea of an ankle rail. And then the box is a bit like a coffin that stands on top.
Coffin.
And the aim is that Roswell Mill can be exhibited in exactly the same way and using exactly the same trestles.
Brilliant. Well done. Cool.
Thank you for
I
sharing.
think I've had more than my time, haven't I?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, thank you. I mean, you know, as long as people have questions and whatnot, and we still have time for a real nice amount of time for Joel and Mark. So assuming that you guys know that the way we do this is we don't typically take breaks since it's such a short trip. But if you all need to do like 3-4 minutes, that's cool. Or I'm just going to turn this over to Joel and Mark, and we'll be looking at N scale. So are you ready to just continue down the track with this, or do we need a break?
Anybody, raise your hands if you need to, you know, otherwise you can slip in and out and we won't notice. Okay, so let's see if I can get here. And, well, that's not. Let's see. This is going to let me go to, let me see if this is going to let me go to my.
Can I just say thanks everybody for the interest in that. There's some great questions.
You. Thanks, Eric. Good
Thanks,
job.
Eric.
Okay. And now let's go to Here, are you seeing me? Oops.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, good. You see it? Good. Let me get back here to the beginning. Oh, welcome to Baltimore.
What a motley crew.
Yes, there's a motley crew of us. And boy,
Wow.
I'd forgotten how much weight I'd lost. That was me about 60 pounds ago. So that was the last time we were in Baltimore. We were
That was me
sponsored
about 100 pounds.
by the B&O, and there we are at the B&O Museum. But let's get into the first thing we're going to talk about. And Jerry was so nice to forward me the photographs of Al Muller's layout. Al Muller's in-scale layout is preserved. Jerry has it right now in a somewhat disassembled state. I had planned on picking it up last summer and bringing it back here and restoring it so that it could go back and become a traveling layout for us as a memorial to Al, who was one of our original very strong modelers. And without further ado, we're going to kind of move into the layout. And the layout is obviously of Gettysburg. This shot right here shows the Gettysburg Station that still exists to this day. And it shows from an operational standpoint, the track behind there is a gravity drop that allows cars to roll in to the station. The tracks on the left are the turning Y for the cars before they would start with the turning part for the loco, so it would go back in and then pick up the cars. Now, this layout is in N-scale, and I will say something right now. What N-scale is 9 millimeters between the rail of tracks separated by 3 different, 9 millimeter gauge separated by 3 different scales. In the UK, it's 1/48th. In Japan, it is 1/50th. And in the United States and most of the rest of the world, the 160th. Al's layout is a 160th scale, okay? Here we have a component of the layout that was borrowed from the late John Allen. John Allen used a trick in which he has a mirror behind a bridge reflecting, and you can see right here the stream. But when you go to the other side, you will see a wagon works on the other side. So that's a rather nice scene expander. This area shows, this shot shows a lot of the farm buildings from the Gettysburg area. In N-scale, I believe a lot of these buildings, yes. Question? Okay, a lot of these buildings are from John Mayer, who has a Facebook page called Buildings in Turmoil, and these are N-scale castings of actual buildings in Gettysburg. He has probably about 35 buildings from various parts of the town that are available, okay? This is a standard Pennsylvania countryside in the cornfield. This is a Pennsylvania barn. Pennsylvania barns are kind of interesting when you look at them because they always mounded up dirt on the back to bring the hay into the barn, which is more of a German barn than an English barn. This is the engine house and turntable. The turntable in this one is digitally controlled. It, I believe, is the turntable from Republic Locomotive Works, who makes basically all of the BTS cars, and some of the BTS buildings are made in N-scale by Marshall Thompson, has the license to make those in N-scale. And so they're available. So almost any of the cars that you have in HO or O are also available in N. This is some of Al's detail work. And it's really phenomenal when you realize that this is in scale.
Yes.
When the roof goes on, the stovepipe touches the back of the stove. The workshop is complete. The tools are on the workbench. And if you look carefully, you will notice that there are bolt holes through the wood for where the doors are bolted together.
Jesus, go.
And this is.
I'm in scale. I'm envious.
Is does the lathe actually turn?
Yeah, yes, it does. Okay?
Oh, okay. I just
But the problem is your fingers are probably too big to get it to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay, one of the things in N-Scale is a lot of stuff is that. One of the things, let me back up right here. I'll show you one of the things. One of the things that's always interesting about N-Scale is how you can actually get a space dimension on the layout, where you trains can move through scenery rather than go through compressed scene to compressed scene to compressed scene. All right, any questions on Al's layout? As soon as I get it back, it'll be available. I will try to make sure that it's available for National Model Railroad conventions or any of the other major conventions. I love to go to those. My vehicle's a little bit bigger than Eric's. I have a crew cab pickup truck that can take almost anything in the back of it. So this will be very easy. It does belong to all of us. I am going to restore it back to operational condition. It has been somewhat slightly disassembled, so I'll put it back together again. And we'll have it available for hopefully our in-person conventions.
Joe, quick question. Were you able to get the buildings as well?
Yes, the buildings are.
Great.
I would mention that the N-Scale convention for 2022 is in Nashville.
Oh.
Okay, I will plan on being there. I like Nashville.
There's one in Reno next year, but I'm not sure I'll be at it, but I'll definitely be in Nashville.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that NMRA, the next NMRA is in San Francisco. So but I'll probably make that one.
Joel?
Yes.
Could you go ahead to the slide that has the turntable?
Yes. Well, actually, I'll go back there. Okay. There we go.
Okay, Joel mentioned that it's partially disassembled. I had to go to Wisconsin to rescue this layout because the people that were taking care of Alan and his wife's estate after she passed away, they were just going to throw this out if somebody did not come and get it right away. So I had a couple-hour window of time, and I got out there, and I thought we were going to be shipping it somehow, and turns out I had to somehow figure out how to get it in my car. And I had a 5 Series BMW, and what we actually did is I went to a hardware store and got a keyhole saw, and I had to literally saw the end off this layout, just this side of that fence behind the barn. And I had to cut through the siding approaching the turntable and just literally butcher the end off this layout. And it felt a lot like taking a chainsaw to the Mona Lisa. But that's the status of it right now. All of the buildings are preserved. Most of them are still attached to the layout. The ones that were loose, I've got in a box. So everything is still there. And I'm really hoping that Joel can restore this to what it was when I went to pick it up. and let the rest of you guys get a look at this thing, because it's a jewel.
Yeah, I don't think there will be any problem. I am one of the original N-Track people from the mid 1970s when I was out in California. I have dropped modules and rebuilt them after they split in half. So
You're the man.
We will get it back together again, and it will be gorgeous.
Good. This track, by the way, is all hand laid.
It's not sectional track?
No, it's all hand laid.
Which is one thing that's in favor of the layout. Al started off with T-Track modules, but then reinforced underneath them and locked them. If you were using a T-Track module, which you're going to hook up with other folks, you have to have a commonality standard that works from Japan to the United States to Australia to Europe and et cetera. So you use Kato Track and some other things like that. But that is specifically for people who want to hook up in the large shows. I have modules like that. And when you, for those particular things, you use at least the Kato or Kaido track for your interface track, because it locks together and provides solid electrical connection. And it's probably about the only track out there that locks together and provides solid electrical connection. If I'm setting my module up next to Jerry's, next to Tom's, and so on and so on and so forth, where everybody has built something slightly different. This is a single unit layout. It is gorgeous. The track is handled. I believe it's all code 55, right, Jerry? I think
Pardon me?
I believe the track is code 55 on it. I think he used code 55, Ralph.
I believe so.
Yeah, it looks like code 55.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I've used code 40 before, and code 40 with some of the climate conditions and on wooden ties can do funny things. So, okay. All right. Any further questions on this? I have another quick presentation we'll do. Okay. Thank you very much on that. Let me slip over here.
And thank you guys for preserving it.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
hey, getting a chance to operate on that is enough reward. Okay. And everybody will get a chance to operate on it. On behalf of Brevet Major General McCollum, we would like to welcome everybody that eventually will find itself under the U.S. Military Railroad, at least until July of 1866, when all the trains were given back. He was located in Alexandria, but by the way, he is at Lookout Mountain in this picture. So, okay. So he's a Chattanooga. Okay.
Hey, who's the sourpuss next to him?
The sourpuss next to him is his aide, because that guy is wearing bars and not stars.
He looks very unhappy. I don't know.
Well, you know, you were told not to move when they took the picture.
He's sitting on the perch of a cliff, right? Okay.
I was gonna say that's a pretty steep drop there.
This is the stock photo. This is where everybody went to get their picture taken on Lookout Mountain.
Oh.
Maybe he was afraid of heights, but had to because of the general.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe when we do Lookout Mountain again, we could all do a group picture where they sat.
No.
That's a great idea. I put that down.
And we can Photoshop ourselves into a shot with it. Okay.
I don't think the Park Service allows us to go out there anymore.
It was marked off.
Probably. But,
Marked off when we were there the last time.
okay. All right. I modeled Alexandria. Alexandria had a couple of railroads. Eric, the Washington and Old Dominion is on the right-hand side of this picture. At this time, it was called the Alexandria Loudon in Hampshire. It was long before it was taken over by the Chesapeake and Ohio. And on the right side of this is the Orange in Alexandria. We are going to be looking at a building located right in the center of this street. And here's that building today. And you know this shot is from today. Hey, there's BMWs in the picture, and there's a Starbucks located in the bottom of the Fitzgerald warehouse. The Fitzgerald warehouse was built in the late 1870s. There is a shot of it when it was getting ready to be recorded in the Historic American Building Survey. So in 1937, it was drawn in to the Historic American Building Collection. It is on the intersection of King Street and Union Street. You see the two tracks still in 1937. Union Street still had tracks. The drawing for this building shows the front elevation as it had come forward to that time. And there are pictures of the sides. Not in the collection is a picture of the back. It also had the building, it has the floor plans and the dimensions. Warehouse number 3, which is on the right, was used by the U.S. Military Railroad for stores. I do not know what was in the rest. And then they have some nice detail pictures. Well, what's really cool is with just a minor adjustment on my copier, it came out perfectly at 1/160th scale. I think originally it's like 1/150th was the scale when it printed off. Conveniently, on the bottom of every page on the lower right-hand side is a foot gauge, so it's easy to convert. So this building. Now, why am I talking about this building? And this is kind of a good shot. I'm talking about this building because the layout it is on is a portable layout, which travels a lot. It's been in numerous train shows. And the considerations in a portable layout are the fact that the darn thing has to be light enough for me to pick up. The buildings have to be robust, and they need to be somewhat dimensionally stable. So what I had started doing when I built this building, and I've now built quite a few more like it, is you have the Fitzgerald warehouse and then another warehouse across the street, which shows I'm using black foam core for the underneath. I went around the building, took shots so I would get the color. Then what I did was I went back into the building and literally just wrap the building in brick material. And then the building across the street, very similar in brick material. And I have found that this particular technique allows me to rather quickly turn out buildings which are relatively bomb-proof and indestructible. Okay, and that's been a technique I particularly like for portable layouts. And here's a shot of the layout. This was at the NMRA convention in 13 when we were all there. So a lot of you've already seen that particular shot. So not only do the Brits do little portable layouts, we Americans do too. Okay, any questions before I turn this over to Mark?
So let's see. Yeah, so are your buildings, not all your buildings are done that way, correct? Or did I miss you already saying that?
Not all of the buildings, all of my accurate buildings are done that way.
Got it.
Where I am reproducing, there are probably about, I think 14 sets of drawing from that area. And if you recall, a couple of our meetings ago, I was talking about what goes on to the right over there, which will be the hay barns.
Yep.
You can see where the wharf sort of comes out there. That continues on. and then the next like 4 feet will be the hay barns on Union Street.
Nice.
And so I do that. Some of these buildings, a lot of the little 2- and 3-story buildings, are a series of homes of yesterday and tomorrow, which were produced in N-scale and in HO, and I believe in O-scale, which are a generic colonial building, which, I mean, if you go into Alexandria, that building is Aquibius. Block after block of the red brick quasi-Georgian buildings. So those I use, paint different colors, rearrange some of the features on them, and use those just to populate the streets.
Super.
Okay.
Thanks, Joel.
All right, Mark.
Thank you.
Let me back out of here.
I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Hope that that's going to show up here. Yep. There we go. And should now be sharing my slideshow. And hide the thumbnails. And get going. Can everybody see and hear this? Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what I'm going to talk about is building T-Track modules, a little bit in general and some of the specs and what T-Track modules are. And then my attempt where I built 2 modules. A couple of years ago, the group, about 2016 or 17, the group sort of put together this challenge that whoever wanted to can build some T-Track modules, and we could have sort of a traveling layout. The idea behind T-Track, it's a scale, it's N scale, but basically it's a little looser, and yet it's still a standard that allows you to connect with just about anybody, anywhere that's so inclined to do this. This is where my 2 hobbies of reenacting and modeling Civil War railroad scenes converge. I've reenacted for about the last 20 years as a Union Army unit, the 72nd New York, in a group out here in California, but we've also done reenactments in Gettysburg and other places back east. Anyways, one of the things that the 72nd and the 2nd Division of the Army of the Potomac was involved in was the Battle of Kettle Run or Bristow Station in 1862. And I had the chance after our 2016 convention to drive down and visit the battlefield. It's near Bristow Station. It's adjacent to the Orange and Alexandria main line that ran to Warrenton, Virginia, and maybe beyond. And it occurred on August 27, 1862, just prior to the Battle of Second Manassas. The units involved were Hooker's Division of the 3rd Corps Army of the Potomac, and on the Confederate side, Ewell's Division, Jackson's Corps Army of Northern Virginia. And that's just a shot of the battlefield as it looks today with an interpretive sign out in the distance. There's a shot of the main line of what was the Orange and Alexandria. As it appears today, it's part of the Norfolk and Southern Railway system, I believe. And this is a view looking down from the battlefield. In 1862, there was only one main line under the control of the USMRR, and it was in a cut approximately 6 to 7 feet below the battlefield level. In the battle, you would have seen on the far side of the track there, the cut, firing towards you, the 60th Georgia Infantry Regiment, part of Ewell's division, was positioned and contesting against the Union troops. Back to T-Track, give you a little bit of a how-to. These are the specifications for what they call a single T-Track module. You can put as many of these together as you want, different scenes, different sceneries, but build a little miniature layout by putting these modules together. This one's called a single module, and these are the dimensions in the standard. The width of the module itself is 12 1/8 inches or 308 millimeters. The depth is 13 inches, 332 millimeters. The height is 2 3/4 inches, or about 69.85 millimeters tall. And the first line of track is set back from the front edge, so that it'll mate with other people's track, 1.5 inches or 38.1 millimeters. The second line is optional. Most ACW lines only had one main line. Double, triple corner modules are also available as kits or can be built according to the specifications. Oops, and I just lost my share there, pardon me. Get back to that. And back into the share. All right, next shot gives you some specs for those who are interested in pursuing the building of T-Track modules. You can go to the sites that are listed there: Masterpiece Modules, CMR Products. They make kits to build the modules. ntrack.org has information on the standards. There's something called the Unofficial T-Track Handbook as well. And I can make this information available to anybody that's interested. We can get together personal messaging or email after the meet. Also, the spec for track, of course, is Kato Unitrack. Total length, 12.2 inches, 310 millimeters. It extends a little bit over the edges of the module so that you have the electrical connectors hooking up to the next module's Kato track. Items number 2010 and number 2020 are the two pieces. If you don't have any other considerations, they would fit nicely across the width of the module. Here's an assembled module. This is the first of two that I built, assembled from the kit by Masterpiece Modules. They have a nice video on YouTube that shows how to put these together. They're dead simple. It's basically gluing and hammering, and they go together quite easily. The module is finished upside down in this case to accommodate below grade streams and scenery. You saw the drawing previously had the track running on the top of the module. If you got a flat scenery set up, no problem. But if you're going to have below grade streams and other scenery elements, you may want to consider building it upside down.
There's also a company, I think it may be the CMR, that I purchased that makes a recessed module that you can build. It would be straight up, but the upper deck is recessed so that you can put lower.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, that is definitely an option. My below track scenery inspiration was Joel's T-Track module. I don't think he got to show us a picture of it earlier, but this is a module that he showed off at the first meet that I went to in 2016, and I was fascinated by his trestle and his stream running through the module. So that's sort of the inspiration for mine. This is just showing on the bottom of what's now the bottom of the module instead of the top. This is the installation of some leveling nuts so that you can make sure that everything's level and stable when you're hooking it up to other people's modules. These are foam sheets that I filled the module with for scenery carving. And I've got 2.5-inch foam sheet, and I've made cutouts for the leveling screws, which are inside the module structure. And these are the sheets about to go into the modules. Once they're installed, I needed the battlefield plateau, as I called it, which is about 6 feet above the railroad cut. So I needed to add 2 1/2-inch thickness foam sheets so that I could do that, and used liquid nails to glue that plateau to the base foam. Once I did that, you can see that I've been testing my placement of the Kato Unitrack sections. Here's the thing about doing T-Track modules. Kato Unitrack is unfortunately code 80. It's a bit heavier than ACW mainlines, but if you can get past that it's the only track, as Joel said earlier, that can take the stress of both holding the layout together and electrically connecting the modules. The Kato locking rail joiner that you can see on the edge of the one piece there, the two pieces, is what makes the difference for putting together solid track sections. Sculpting the Broad Run stream bed. This is the right-hand module. The battlefield that I showed you in the photo was bordered by a couple of streams. On the right, or to the east, was Broad Run, and it's the little bigger of the two streams. And I used basically a hot foam knife to do the initial cuts and dig out the stream bed. I traced it on the module, and I cut out the module front, the wooden part of the module, with my jigsaw. And after that, it's just let your artistic juices flow and keep cutting. This is the left. Kettle Run is the other stream bordering the other side of the battlefield. So the left module with Kettle Run cut into the module. And you'll notice that I'm testing the placement of the Kato Unitrack and the Kettle Run single bent trestle. It was a much smaller stream. It did require only about a single bent to get across that stream. And that's what we're showing here. This is just a view upside down of the Kato track and how I inserted the module. Basically, what I had to do was cut out trestles from a piece of Atlas Flex Track to bridge the gap. And once I had everything in place there, what I finally decided to do was I replaced the Kato rails. I just pulled out the rails and inserted 2 rails that were Atlas Flex Track Code 80 rail. Comes out of the Flex Track pretty easy, and then you can just insert it in the slots in the Kato base pieces. And that's what I ended up doing. That way, I've got a solid rail all the way across the width of the module. This is the right module with the Broad Run stream bed cut into it and getting started on that. Trestle's not there in place yet. How did I cover the scenery base? I got a suggestion from Bernie Kempinski, and he said that he liked this Durham's water putty. It's a soluble powder. It's a lot lighter than plaster, but it dries rock hard. And basically you mix it with water and a little bit of earth-colored latex paint, and that becomes your ground base for the module. Drying time is about 30 minutes, and it allows modifications as you go. So this is now adding scenery to the right Broad Run module, and you can see I've got the earth-colored water putty base applied all over the module and the stream bed. I then painted the bottom of the stream bed brownish green. We've got rocks placed in the stream bed, and then another idea from Joel for the water effect was to use something called Mod Podge, which is available not only in art stores, but you can buy it in Walmart and places like that as well. It's an artist gloss finish, and you basically just get a big old brush and you just keep adding on coats until you're happy with the thickness or the depth of your water and the coloring. You can mix paint directly into the Mod Podge as well, so that it's a little bit more opaque, but you can still see things like rocks in the bottom and everything through it. And by golly, it looks like water. The other thing that Joel said is really nice about Mod Podge is if it gets all dusty and it's starting to look a little decrepit after a couple of years, you just paint on a couple more coats of Mod Podge and it looks brand new. The 3-bent bridge here is the same style as I constructed for Kettle Run, but it's got 3 bents crossing the river. And I'm also using various woodland scenics, trees, and vegetation. That's the view of Kettle Run module with some of the scenery applied to the stream as well. You'll also notice I've got a road that really existed across the back of the battlefield there. It paralleled the tracks, and that's how Hooker's troops used it used the road to come down from Warrenton Junction and to arrive at the battlefield. The road ruts, you can barely see them in this photo. You'll see them closer in some other photos, are cut with N-scale cannon wheels while the water putty was still malleable. And they're approximately the distance apart of the cannons and limbers and wagons that would have come down the road. The ballast added to the track, in some USMRR photos, there really was ballast used in this area of the O&A. I found a couple of photos in Abdil's book that indicated that they did ballast the track, but the color of the ballast, and DC pointed this out to me early on when I was building the modules, would have been much lighter for the color in the area that they were dealing with. And so I've later on, I lightened it to match the local earth color. Starting to add figures to the battlefield scenery. For those of you that are doing N scale and you want to put some military figures on there, in my opinion, the best supplier is GHQ Miniatures. You can find them online, and they have the widest selection, most military options, and for my money, they're the best proportioned N scale figures, and they come in a wide variety of poses. I used acrylics Viejo to paint them, and then I basically finished everything with a clear coat, dull coat, clear coat, to seal the paints on the figures, and also to dull them down so they didn't look all shiny and glossy. I blended bases into scenery for some of them, and I cut off the bases of others. They've all been glued to the scenery base with cyanoacrylate glue. The scenery is almost finished in this shot. You see the two modules put together. You get the sense of what the battlefield looked like. These are just some close-ups of the finished scenery. You've got Union gun on the left there is being brought forward. General Hooker's command group is mounted in the bottom center. You've got the 70th and my unit, the 72nd New York, are advancing and facing the 60th Georgia across this railroad cut. In this view, looking towards the Broad Run module and the edge of the module, you've got Zouaves of the 73rd New York, part of the same brigade of the 72nd and the 70th, called the Excelsior Brigade, and they're advancing on elements of the 8th and 6th Louisiana regiments. And you can see the road there and bridge across the Broad Run with some Confederates retreating in the distance. This is
I hope somebody's recording this somewhere.
Actually, well, I've got this as a PowerPoint slideshow, and I could actually share this too if anybody wants copies of it. Ewell's rear guard, Ewell was actually designated to hold off the Union troops as Jackson withdrew towards 2nd Manassas with the rest of his corps. And here we have the last gun on Ewell's side, which is about to fire one more time and then withdraw. You'll note we got down telegraph lines along the track. This is from Jackson and Ewell's destruction of Bristow Station and the surrounding area. And this is when the Union Army was first aware, General Pope became aware that something was amiss when he was out in the Warrenton area. And he got reports that there was havoc being played at Bristow Station. In fact, it was set on fire, burned to the ground, and the Confederates were blocking the tracks and stopping rail traffic along the tracks. And so this is just part of that destruction. This is the last Union gun clattering across the little bridge across Kettle Run on the main road there. And now in possession of the field, Hooker thinks he's won a pretty neat little victory. There were about 400 Union casualties in this battle, so it wasn't insignificant, but in reality, Ewell was ordered to hold Hooker in a rear guard action and then withdraw, and Ewell then rejoined Jackson near Manassas And 2 days later, as history tells us, the real battle of the Second Manassas began. The backdrops for the modules, I basically just had photos blown up and printed on foam core board or pasted on foam core board, and they're mounted to the back of the modules with little Velcro strips. The module, the right module backdrop is an interpretive map. I took a photo of that at the Kettle Run battlefield. You know, see the little star showing you are here. It basically is the same area of the right module that's portrayed on my two modules. And that's the backdrop for the right module. Then this is the finished modules. Got a backdrop showing the scenery of the battlefield on the left-hand side with a little bit of information on the battle. And those are in place. And in the end, I had about 250 to 300 figures total. I lightened the ballast. As you can see there, module frames have been stained with walnut stain, and they're ready to hook up and run with other people's modules. In hindsight, the only thing I would have done different is I would have used a single 1 foot by 2 foot double module, and thereby would have avoided the noticeable San Andreas fault that you can see running through the middle of the battlefield. And that's it. And I'm happy to take questions now if anybody's got them.
Great job.
Nice work. Very nice.
Well, you're welcome. And it was a pleasure building this. And it was fun. For a couple of years, Joel had it, and he was using it as part of our traveling N-track layout, which had a few other modules, including a couple of Al's modules and Joel's modules and Paul Dobbs's modules. And he took it around to NMRA meets and some other shows. And I've got it back now, and I'm going to try and turn it into a tabletop switching layout. I'm going to be adding some other modules. Joel's given me some inspiration for the rail yards at Alexandria and some other things that I thought I'd add to this. So, yeah.
So Mark, I think, you know, the things that come across from here is, one is your attention to the actual event and the way you were able to incorporate that rail line into this battle. I mean, it's really nicely done. And the attention that you gave to showing the distinct units and the painting is, I mean, you know, for me to do HO is something, but I can't even fathom doing N scale. And the detail you were able to get on those figures is really, really well done.
Well, I appreciate that, Tom, and I will say this, it probably has contributed to my failing eyesight.
Oh, no.
It was a lot of fun painting those guys under a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed it. And I will say this about the GHQ miniatures again. I love the scale and the proportion of them. They're about a ½ inch tall. And even the rifles, the muskets are correctly proportioned, and the bits and pieces on their uniforms. And that made them a little bit easier to paint, I think, because the detail is all well raised. The guys' canteens and cartridge boxes and everything. So they were a lot of fun to paint.
Did you say this was connected to Manassas?
This was connected to Second Manassas. This took place 2 days before.
I meant the Manassas Junction. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, the rail line runs on down to Manassas Junction.
Oh, so you could actually.
At the time of this battle, though, at Bristow Station, the rail line had been cut, and the Yankees didn't know that yet, and that's why they had sent a train down with the 72nd to see what was going on in the middle of the night. They saw the station burning. They got off and advanced in skirmish order and realized they were facing an entire division. And so they hopped back on the train and ran back up the line to Warrenton, got the rest of the division along with General Hooker. Pope sent him down to see what was going on. And in the meantime, the Confederates had been derailing and stopping trains and capturing troops and supplies and so forth. And no trains were getting through to Warrenton, obviously, at this time. So it was kind of interesting. But yeah, it runs all the way to Manassas Junction.
So you could incorporate Manassas Junction into this.
Absolutely, and that's one of my thoughts. I was going to try and include a module for Manassas. Well, I was going to have another module showing Bristow Station being burned and wrecked. And then I was going to try and include Manassas Junction as well, and all the devastation that took place.
Lots of good shots of Manassas Junction.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Abdelsbuck and other places.
And you can put out there about 20 variations on the conductor's cars that were converted into office cars and cook cars and other things. I have a shot that shows, and if you look, all the roofs are all different, where they're set up to do different functions. It's kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, because all you need to do basically for that is take the BTS or Republic conductor's car and do the modifications to it.
I was thinking about just putting a bunch of charred wheel sets along the track.
Oh, we do have the last. We do have the last.
Stock would be easy.
Okay. Mark.
Mark,
you intend, you say that if you had to do it again, you'd get basically a 1 by 2 foot module.
That's
right?
correct.
Well, what you might try doing is, if you intend to leave them together like this, I would bolt the 2 sections together, and then you could go back and you could scenic and make that. You say the San Andreas Fault. You can make that disappear, and if you wanted to, you can even get really microscopic thin plywood and put it as a veneer all the way across the front. That would even clean up that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, DC, and I think that's something I'll probably do. When it was part of the traveling show, I thought I would give some strings of ground cover, some lichen and stuff that you could drape over that. But the problem is that doesn't survive getting hauled around, and it always seems to be getting lost. So, but if it's going to sit in permanent location on my whatever I put it on, yeah, that's a good idea. Bolting it together and then really using the scenery over the top of that, you could cover that pretty easily.
It's very good to have. When you're setting up matching T-Track modules, to have a little bag of what the wargamers call scatter, which is with Phoenix ground foam. You just kind of dribble along right there. Yep. All makes it better.
Okay.
Good.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Anything else for Mark?
That was great, Mark.
Mark, excellent job. Excellent job, and I like the shout out. Thank you.
Oh, how did when you were shipping it, did you guys meet up to transfer the modules?
Yeah.
Did you send them?
The first time we did, but I carried them on the plane back to the 2017 meet in Harper's Ferry.
Yeah.
If you give me a second here, let's see if I can stop my share for a second. Let me just go I got the boxes right here.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you. These boxes.
This is the standard box, and he's got a much fancier version of it.
Yeah, I went to the UPS store, and the guy cut these down for me. I don't know if we can see me. Let's see. How do you make me the active screen showing me?
It's showing you right now.
Oh, it's showing me? Okay.
Yep.
As long as I keep talking, it shows me. All right, there's the box. He cut it down, put these handles into it. The lid comes over. Inside, we lined it with styrofoam.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then we had some styrofoam supports on the sides to keep the modules from shifting around. And then we took Dixie cups, styrofoam Dixie cups, to put over some of the taller trees to keep them from getting squashed down. When I took it on the plane, I just used the handles, and I had enough miles to get first class tickets, so I had some overhead space. My wife went with me. She carried one, and I carried the other, and we stuck them in the overhead. But after that, they went home from there in Joel's Mini.
That's great.
You know, I have packed the entire T-Track layout in my Mini Cooper.
Right. Right.
Oh, and there's the box. This is how Joel got it back to me. He sent it FedEx and just folded the lid in and shipped it back. And it it arrived in great shape.
I usually leave when I ship, and this is the one he was looking at. This was the first one. When I ship, I usually leave the wood on the back, and that holds wedges the box. And I have a couple of pieces of 1-inch foam go around the edge to keep things from shifting. But once you put this on the top, it's pretty good.
Solid.
Joel, next time you have your car packed up, you need to take some photos of it. I want to see those.
That's why I now have a crew cab pickup with a big bed.
Ah.
Got it. Good. Well, gentlemen, this was a lot of fun. I want to thank Joel and Mark for prepping with their end scale work. Eric, it was great to see you and see what's happening on the other side there. It was. It's good to have another Southerner in the mix. He's from Southern England, by the way, for those of you that don't know. So as far as I'm concerned, that qualifies. But we hope to see you tomorrow. If not, that's okay. We're around on Saturday. If you have any questions or any comments right now before I close,
what time are we starting tomorrow?
1 o'clock. Is that good for everybody?
It's the same link, right?
Same link.
Okay.
Yep.
1 o'clock. Okay.
1 o'clock. Yep. Good.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Eric, again,
Great
thanks.
stuff, Eric. Love it.
And thanks to the guys for organizing, and thanks for the presentations. Enjoyed it very much.
Good to see you, Daryl.
Nice to be able to put some faces to the names.
And next time I'm through Strawberry Plains, I'll give you a call, Daryl.
Well, I don't live in Strawberry Plains, but I live near enough there. We can work that out. I'd be glad to show you around some of the sites there.
Yeah, I stop at the Holiday Inn Express there. And when I'm going to DC, that's my stop is that.
If you stop at the Holiday Inn Express right off the interstate at the Strawberry Plains Pike exit, I'm about maybe a mile, maybe 2 from there.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you, Daryl. I'll take